What's up, Psychedelic Investors? My name's James, and you're watching The Psychedelic Investor. In today's episode, we'll be discussing why psychedelic stocks are not cannabis stocks, and why stock prices will not follow the same path. For those who remember, pot stocks skyrocketed on news of legalization, and then quickly tumbled back down to earth. Take, for example, Aurora Cannabis. Aurora in 2016 had a share price around $6 a share, but by 2018, the price shot up to $160. Only to drop back down to around $6 in 2020. As I've scrolled through Facebook and Reddit, I've seen many people dismiss companies like MindMed and Compass Pathways as just being the cannabis hype 2.0. This, however, could not be further from the truth. To be clear, stocks like MindMed Stock, which has the ticker MMED on the Canadian NEO market and MMEDF on the American OTC market, and Compass Pathways stock, ticker symbol CMPS, are nothing like cannabis stocks. To explain why, we're going to read an article entitled Why the Psychedelics Market is Not Cannabis 2.0, written by Jeff Siegel, and we'll pause throughout to discuss. But before we get into it, if you enjoy this video and find the information provided useful and entertaining, invest in this channel with your like and subscribe. Over time, you'll see your investment grow as we continue to bring you the information you need before making an investment in the psychedelic medicines field. If you're feeling extra generous, leave us a comment on what you would like to see covered in the future. Not only will this help you see the content that you want to see, but it will also be an enormous help with the almighty YouTube algorithm. Enjoy the video. So jumping right in, we can see that this Bazinga article is titled Why the Psychedelics Market is Not Cannabis 2.0, and it is written by Jeff Siegel. Scrolling down to the bottom of the article, always the best place to start, don't you think? We can see that Siegel is a managing partner of the JLS Fund, which is a $50 million fund focused on psychedelics and plant-based medicines, and he is also the co-founder of Green Chip Stocks, a private investment community focused on socially responsible investing. So I just want to start here to point out that Siegel is not necessarily an unbiased party. He believes that psychedelic medicines are going to be the future, and he is willing to put his, and his clients', money where his mouth is. That doesn't mean he's wrong. In fact, I believe he is completely right. It is just necessary to explain who he is before getting into the article. So, scrolling back up to the top, let's dive in. Why the Psychedelics Market is Not Cannabis 2.0 by Jeff Siegel. Psychedelic stocks got a nice boost in November after voters in Washington, D.C. and the state of Oregon voted to decriminalize psychedelics. And that led some analysts to suggest that the psychedelics market will now play the same way the cannabis market played out, rewarding early investors and sinking those who bought near the top. But this analysis lacks substance, and really is just not sound. So, Siegel is being diplomatic here. I wouldn't say that the analysis lacks substance, I would just call it straight up lazy. People who hold this opinion clearly haven't done the proper research, and it shows. Continuing. The truth is, there's very little similarity between the cannabis market and psychedelics market, except for the legality of these substances. And even the suggestion that the two markets are similar because of federal prohibition isn't entirely accurate, as cannabis is still listed as a Schedule I substance, but not all psychedelics are. Take ketamine, for instance, which is not a Schedule I substance and has been legally used as an anesthesia, a pain reliever, and a treatment for severe depression. And I'm just going to jump in here, so Siegel is again correct. He doesn't mention the companies here, but Field Trip Health, ticker symbol FTRP, is already treating patients with depression with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy in locations like Toronto, New York, and Amsterdam. There are also other companies, like the conglomerate Johnson & Johnson, who are working on ketamine treatments. Of all the psychedelic substances that will be used for healing, ketamine appears to be the first to market, and is an extremely exciting opportunity. Back to the article. Now, one of the biggest problems with comparing cannabis to psychedelics is that cannabis is really just one plant genus, whereas psychedelics encompass hundreds of different plants, substances, and molecules. If one describes a psychedelics company, that company is unlikely to be experimenting or testing every single psychedelic substance known to man. Perhaps it's LSD or psilocybin mushrooms, or maybe it's DMT, ketamine, or peyote. A more accurate comparison for the psychedelics industry would actually be the biotech industry, as both seek to manipulate and work with various organisms in an effort to create commercially viable products. Through research and testing, trials and errors, biotech companies have brought us antibiotics, gene therapy, and life-saving vaccines. Similarly, psychedelic companies are researching, developing, and testing treatments for PTSD, anxiety, depression, addiction, and dozens of other neurological-related illnesses that still have no known cures. So again, jumping in here just because I want to re-emphasize his point, companies like MindMed and Compass Pathways are biotech companies, not recreational drug companies. These companies have zero interest in selling psychedelic compounds for people to take recreationally, even if it were legal, which, by the way, it won't be anytime soon. As a side note, before Kevin O'Leary invested in MindMed, one of his conditions from founder J.R. Ron was that their compounds only be used for medicine and never as recreational drugs. So again, these companies are biotechs, not legalization plays. Resuming. It is true that cannabis can and does serve as treatment for certain mental illnesses such as anxiety and PTSD, but it has been unable to successfully penetrate the world of biotech and big pharma. And this is perhaps the primary reason investors must eschew the idea that these two industries are closely related. Ah yes, I use my cannabis for glaucoma? Continuing. Although cannabis is now legal in some form in nearly every single state, it has received very little support from the medical community and, of course, the FDA. This is not the case for psychedelics. In fact, the FDA has given breakthrough therapy designations to a number of psychedelic substances that are being tested as treatment for various mental health issues. If you're unfamiliar, the FDA describes its breakthrough therapy designation as a process designated to expedite the development of drugs that are intended to treat a serious condition, and preliminary clinical evidence indicates that the drug may demonstrate substantial improvements over available therapy on a clinically significant endpoint. Whereas the FDA has long been critical and, quite frankly, a reluctant obstacle of the cannabis industry, for the psychedelics industry it is a willing participant. And that alone puts psychedelics on a different level than cannabis. So again, I can't stress enough how important this is. Psychedelic substances like psilocybin, LSD, and ketamine are being ushered in with open arms from the establishment medicine regulators. Assuming they make it through their clinical trials and the results remain positive, these substances will become medicines used by the establishment. Continuing. Now, this isn't a criticism of the cannabis industry. As an investor, the cannabis industry has absolutely served me well, and I suspect will continue to do so. But, for the most part, the cannabis industry is a one-trick pony, and it's not going to find its way into the good graces of the FDA or Big Pharma. Psychedelics, however, offer hundreds of various molecules that can be developed, tested, and deployed through the same process biotech companies and Big Pharma develop, test, and deploy their products into the marketplace. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that if you latch on to the right biotech or pharma play that has the right product, you can easily see 10, 20, 30x returns. It happens all the time, and I foresee the psychedelic market playing out the same way. And again, here, I am in 100% agreement with Mr. Siegel. So, $77 billion up for grabs. At the moment, much of the work being done in psychedelics is focused on addiction, PTSD, and anxiety and depression. In 5 years, the anxiety and depression treatment market is estimated to be worth around $20 billion. The PTSD treatment market is estimated to be worth more than $7 billion, and the addiction treatment market is estimated to be worth more than $50 billion. So I would just add here the potential for LSD to help people with ADHD. MindMed is currently studying this, and they have a phase 2 trial underway. And they value that market around $9 billion. And I'm sure in the upcoming years we'll see more areas of study between mental health maladies and psychedelic substances. So, that $77 billion may just be scratching the surface. Continuing. This isn't just chump change, and these are all illnesses that still don't have reliable cures. And while I'm not suggesting the psychedelics industry will control these markets entirely, the potential to gain significant market share is far higher than what the cannabis industry will ever be able to claim. Particularly because in these earliest stages of growth, the psychedelics industry is already working alongside the FDA, as opposed to working in defiance of it, and following similar protocols that have long been established by the biotech and pharma models. Certainly, it's understandable that investors might equate the psychedelics market to the cannabis market, but when you peel back a few layers and really dive down into what the psychedelics industry is doing and how it operates, it's clear that psychedelics investors are really just investing in the next evolution of mental health treatments and technology, which is worth considerably more than the cannabis industry ever could be worth. As we head into 2021, we'll see dozens of new psychedelic stocks come to market. Many will fall flat, but there will be a handful that I believe will offer investors real long-term value. These include, but are not limited to, Compass Pathways, CMPS, Cybin Inc., CLXPF, Better Life Pharma, BETRF, Entherion Biomedical Core, ENTBF, and MindMed, MMEDF. So, just as a quick note on these stocks, I own MindMed and Compass Pathways, and I would put them far ahead of the rest on this list, or any other companies in this space. In terms of how advanced they are in clinical trials, which is the most important thing for investors in this field to look at, they are the furthest advanced. I'll probably expand my psychedelics medicine portfolio to include other companies eventually, but for now, I think it's fair to say that MMEDF and CMPS are in the lead. Back to the article. MindMed, by the way, is a stock I told you about back in March, writing, I have little doubt that those who get an early piece of MindMed will be sitting on quadruple-digit gains within 3 years. The stock was trading at around 50 cents a share when I wrote those words. Today, it's trading in excess of $2.50, and that's in less than a year. If you bought the stock the day I wrote about it, congratulations! You're currently sitting on a gain in excess of 400%, and with plenty more to come too, because we're just getting warmed up. And here, truer words have never been spoken. I was lucky enough to hear about MindMed before their IPO and do some preliminary research and got in around 40 cents Canadian. So I am up about 10x right now, but I am not selling. We are just in the first inning of the psychedelic medicines revolution, and I am hoping for another 10 or 20x. Having said that, I do just want to remind everybody that this is not a sure thing, and there is still lots of risk involved. I would not go and dump all of your money into this sector unless you have an extremely high risk tolerance, as this is still a speculative field. I have about 10% of my total portfolio in psychedelic stocks, and that works for me. Reminder guys, I am not a financial advisor. Make sure you do your own due diligence into any stock you are going to buy. Let me know in the comments what topic you'd like me to cover next, and if you haven't seen it yet, check out our video on why MindMed's LSD neutralizer is genius. It really is a must-watch. Oh, and if you haven't liked the video and smashed that subscribe button yet, well, what are you waiting for? It's free, and it will make sure content like this keeps getting made. Until next time, this is James from the Psychedelic Investor, signing out.